All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our very first Sugar Advisory Group. We are so excited to finally be getting all of us together, and thank you all for joining us this morning. I wanted to let you know we have a few people here in the office, and so this is Sharon Kaiser, and we've also got Rick Winter.
Hello.
And Bill Blakely, who is our developer from Technical Reality. I think many of you know him at this point.
Hi.
And so we thought we would start by just kind of going through what we believe the objectives of today's meetings are. Rick has really wonderfully put together this amazing agenda that is really designed for collaborative groups as an initial meeting. So we'll kind of be following through that, and we'll kind of go through a couple of exercises and kind of set up kind of the expectations for the group. So, so today's objectives are really getting to know one another, and so we'll be introducing ourselves and the primary role that we have at the council as it relates to working in sugar. And also one primary thing that you hope to contribute to this group. We will also be talking about establishing the purpose of the group. So I think we generally have an understanding, a shared understanding of why we are meeting, but we will be formalizing that into a charter so that we can really make sure that we have some really great procedures in place. We will be gathering feedback for potential ground rules, meeting support process, and materials. And of course, we'll be planning for next steps. So those are the overall objectives. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into introducing ourselves. So I'm going to ask that when you introduce yourself, you can please say your name and your role at the council and one thing that you're hoping to contribute to the group. And if you could also chat in your name into the chat box so that we can get an official attendees list, that would be fantastic as well. And of course, you can also include your council. So as an example, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Sharon Kaiser. I'm the Director of Finance and Operations with the Denver Early Childhood Council. And my primary role as it relates to sugar is really as a financial approver. And of course, I guess I help a little bit with some of the development of sugar as well. And so what I hope to contribute to this group is really helping to facilitate this process during the initial phases and then really transition that facilitation over to Rick, our wonderful new ECCLA employee. So now we're going to go ahead and jump over to Rick, who can introduce himself.
Okay, I'm Rick. I'm the wonderful new ECCLA employee, according to Sharon. I'm here to help as much as I can with data, with membership support, and with evaluation. So I will be eventually taking over a lot of the support for sugar.
Woohoo! We also have Bill here.
Hi, I'm Bill Blakely. I'm a software developer from Technical Reality. I do a lot of the development of the custom things that you find in sugar, and so I will be helping bring the ideas that you have to life.
Okay. And it looks like Amy Balt was the first person to chat in her name, so we can start with her for introductions.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning. I'm Amy Bolt. I'm with Early Childhood Council of the San Luis Valley, and I am a quality improvement coach. So I see the providers and coach them on Pyramid Plus approach and ordering items from sugar. And one thing I hope to gain from this is to share our struggles and to share our successes, and then to bring our council's views back to you, and so we can make this a more user-friendly system.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like the next person who logged their name was Emily from Alliance for Kids. Emily, are you with us? We cannot hear you yet. Great. Well, maybe while we wait for Emily, we can go on to Quan with CDHS.
Yes, this is Quan Tran, Research and Data Analyst over at the Office of Early Childhood at the Colorado Department of Human Services. And I'm mainly here just to listen in and give indirect general support between Sugar and Colorado Shines.
Great. Thank you, Quan. It's great to have you here.
Glad to be here.
All right, moving down the list, we have Sharon Pendergast.
Hi, this is Sharon Pendergast. I'm with ecConnect, which is the Early Childhood Partnership of Adams County. And I am a project coordinator for them as well as a quality improvement navigator. And what I'm hoping to contribute to the group is to bring the council's perspectives to what their struggles are so that they can get to know it and love it and use it efficiently and effectively and maybe bring some tips back to them about how to do that.
That sounds amazing. Thank you very much. All right, next on the list we have Michelle Gonzalez with CDHS. Michelle, are you available to say hello?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. I'm Michelle Gonzalez. I'm with the Office of Early Childhood. I'm one of the QRIS coordinators. My main focus is to, one, get a better understanding of what, how everyone's using Sugar and to collect data, but to also give feedback on what kind of data we're collecting and the reasons behind why we're collecting the data.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. All right. Next on the list, we have Phil Perrin, also a CDHS.
Hey there. This is Phil. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. I'm with CDHS OEC, research analyst. I'm here hopefully to contribute maybe some thought process behind the connectivities between Trails to Salesforce to Sugar, and then hopefully long-term thinking about the feedback from Sugar back into Salesforce so that we can have some really cool synced up data to work with.
Wonderful. We're very, very excited about that. So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think Tiffany is indicating that her mic is not working. So Tiffany, if you want to, or Emily, maybe it's Emily, if you want to chat in a short little introduction, and I'd be happy to read that aloud. Next on the list is Lisa Sadar, or Sader. Lisa, I think I always pronounce your last name wrong.
It is solder, but
Okay, thank you.
pretty common that's not how people say it. So, so I'm Lisa Sauter. My job title here at the Early Childhood Council is Quality Support Team Coordinator. So I guess I do a lot of things, but definitely am fairly involved with Sugar and supporting the coaching team here at our agency, and had the benefit of working on it through the CCAP pilot. So I think I learned a lot. I have a lot more to learn, and hopefully have some decent feedback to give into the system that would make it more user-friendly or easier or valuable or things like that.
Wonderful, and I think you have already contributed in that way many times over, so thanks so much for being here, Lisa. All right, next on the list is Nicole Malone with Boulder County. She's saying that she's not sure if her microphone is working. Do you want to give it a shot, Nicole? here to click. Nicole, if you'd like to chat in a little bit of an introduction, I'd be happy to read that aloud as well. Next we have Heather Hawk. Heather, are you there? Hi.
Sharon, actually, this is Lisa. Is the audio able to be functional off the computers? Because I'm not having any success with it, and I'm having to use the phone today and was really hoping not to have to do that.
You know, there shouldn't be any reason why the computer audio doesn't work unless your computer itself doesn't have a microphone. Really, all the computer audio needs is speakers and a microphone on your computer, and it will work.
Yeah, I couldn't even get audio today.
Oh. Well, I think sometimes we do know that you get a better connection if you use the phone call option, so that might be recommended.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to Mandy with Arapahoe County.
Hi, I'm Mandy Boknecht. I am the Director of Finance for Arapahoe County, and I am more of an end user, so I'm most interested in how it all flows from, I'm in the purchasing and vendor side of it. So I want to see how that goes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mandy. All right, so for Emily, she chatted in a little introduction. She is the QI Navigator with Alliance for Kids. She uses Sugar on a daily basis to support spending and coaching. I hope to help make Sugar more user-friendly while sharing our council's challenges and successes. So I think we're coming on a theme here, and that's really great because, of course, one of the primary purposes of this group is to really make sure that the voices of councils are heard in the development phase, the testing phase, and the implementation phase of all of the new development that's been going on in Sugar, and really that around providing feedback on trainings, support materials, and sometimes when a process just isn't working for people the way that it was intended. So that is absolutely something that we will be covering at length with this group. Are there any other people on the call that we have missed from an introduction perspective? They have gotten everyone.
No.
All right. Well, then we will go ahead and move forward. Let's see. Yep, we will go ahead and move forward with the next item on the agenda, which is reviewing the purpose of the group. So really we'd like to have this be, right now we're just going to give a couple of quick sentences on what we believe the purpose of the group should be, and then we're going to kind of go through the ground rules for this particular group. Rick is going to facilitate that. And then after that, we're actually going to work on a solution exercise. I think somebody's audio may have just turned on computer audio, and there's a bit of an echo. Oh, it looks like it was taken care of. Thank you. So the solution exercise will really get us into the mode of thinking about things from a particular perspective. And this is actually borrowed from the Open Media Foundation. And it has, really helped, I think, in setting the stage for how our team internally thinks about problems and solutions. So we'll kind of go through that. And then once we get through that exercise, we're going to revisit that purpose of the group and have that be a little bit more of an open discussion. At that point, we might have some decision points to come together as a group to make some decisions, and then plan the next steps related to those decisions. And that would be primarily around creating the charter document, determining how frequently we need to meet. We might need to meet more frequently at the beginning and then have a more regular schedule later on. We can decide what the roles for the next meeting could be, and then we will kind of go through review and evaluation of this meeting. So we're really trying to slow things down a little bit, take some time to be reflective, hear everyone's opinions, and kind of get things started from that perspective. Are there any questions or things that you feel like should be covered on this agenda today and that are not mentioned here? All right, sounds good. So again, I'm kind of thinking high level about why we are having yet another meeting, right? we as nonprofits, we have so many meetings. And so really we felt that this was going to be a very important governing body that helps ECCLA make decisions about any new development, maintenance, fixes, or other solutions related to the shared data systems. And most specifically, that's around Sugar and ecConnect for this group. But there are ramifications for our partner agencies, the Colorado Department of Human Services and the Colorado Department of Education, around QRIS and PDIS and what changes might affect them. So we will be establishing sort of formal voting rules, what kinds of topics or issues are raised through the Sugar Advisory Group versus what should be handled internally by the ECCLA staff, and kind of setting things up for success so that we have a procedure for that. So that, for example, let's say Adams County might be interested in doing some new development around tracking grant objectives under the Project Launch grant that they have. So that kind of question might be brought up to the Sugar Advisory Group, you know, talked about from a feasibility perspective, from a cost, kind of who's paying for what portions of the development. Would that only be available for Adams County, or would that be available broadly for all councils? And kind of making a decision around that, and then setting up scoping of that work and timeline and things like that. So that's sort of one tangible example of what this group might be handling in the future when it comes to bringing in additional capacities into the system. Are there any questions or comments on that? Anything else you'd like to add, Rick?
Well, I think I'll probably just echo is like how, because I'll be doing a lot of the work, and I want to make sure that I accomplish the goals of the councils. But if there's a lot of items to do, it's like, what do I do first? What do I do second? What do I do third? And so that will be really important for the group to direct me in the priorities. Otherwise, I'll just make it up on my own, and, and that won't be any good. I want to make sure that I support what this group wants to do in the priorities of the group.
Yes, that's a great point. So we're going to give some examples of that. And there are some things that are sort of mandatory priorities, so we kind of have to have those things take precedent, and so we'll give some examples of those. But there are other things that you know, we could actually order based on what councils feel like is more important or less important, or, you know, hey, this will take just a couple days of development, or this will take a few months. And so this group will be helpful in determining those priorities. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Rick, who can go over the ground rules on the next page.
Okay. So did everybody receive this agenda with the second page that has the ground rules? If you're just going to type in chat, if you you got it. I see one. Okay.
Yes, lots of yeses.
Okay. All right. It looks like if anybody did not get it, could you email me, Rick at eclacolorado.org, and I'll send it out again. So on the second page, it has the potential ground rules, and I want to thank the Pyramid Plus website because I stole it from them and edited it a bit. And what I'd like you to do, instead of going over this in detail, is if you look at this and if you see anything that needs to be changed, if you could type it in. So what I'm going to do is give you a couple minutes to read it, and if you just sort of scan it and look at it, and if there's any changes that you want to make, anything we need to add, write it in, and then we'll continue on at the next meeting. So you can quickly look at it now, and then between now and the next meeting, look at it. Does that make sense? So right now, I'm just having people read this through.
Okay.
And if they have any comments, changes, and if you get done, you could also say done. So we get an idea. Okay. So when you're looking through this, see there's a lot under the team roles. Actually, with a provider of refreshments, unless I could send things through the phone, we probably won't do that one. But people may have multiple roles. For example, I'm being the note taker right now, but Sharon is pretty much the convener and the facilitator at the moment. We don't have a timekeeper, but so far we're doing okay with the time. So, but it is possible that like I would be the note taker and the timekeeper in the next meeting. We need sort of a little music playing while they're thinking.
Yeah, I didn't set that up.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone is welcome to sort of speak up and chat. This is meant to be interactive. The only reason we're not meeting in person is because we are spread across the state. So please feel free to voice your thoughts either via chat or via your phone.
Oh, we got one all good?
Yeah, we got a couple done.
A couple done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Team member done? Done, done. What the one that said, I'm covered as ad hoc.
Hi, this is Amy Bolt. Can I just say something?
Of course.
Hi, I was just really glad to see these ground rules because we use these in our Pyramid Plus approach meetings within our council and also within our leadership team meetings at our site. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. I stole it from your site.
Yeah, I think this is just one tiny example of how amazing Rick is already doing his new job. He has very little information. He's come right in. We're really excited.
Let's move on to the 6 hats.
Someone was just asking if recordings will be shared so we can review them and catch up. Yes, we'll probably develop a little group in the support site, and I believe that we can actually set it up so that we have a small group that is permission-based, so only the Sugar Advisory Group members would have access to those materials. But we could also decide we want those to be broadly available to all councils. It just sort of depends on how we design our charter and how freely we want to share these meetings broadly.
Okay, one of the challenges I think for people in a group is some people are naturally sort of quiet and reserved, other people are naturally very critical, and other people, sort of want to make things be very efficient. So the 6 hats by Edward de Bono I really like is that we all have to put on these various hats at various times. So if you're normally not critical, the black hat over on the right is sometimes we will need to be very critical, like for example, establishing my priority. What's really, really important, and if there are things that I shouldn't be doing, then I shouldn't do them. So we'll need people to be critical. But at other times we might need to, feel like we need to celebrate and be very optimistic. And some people it's harder to be optimistic than others, but we'll sort of say, okay, it's time for everybody to put their yellow hat on, celebrate that we've done a great job, and make sure that everybody's morale is all up. So this is, I like these 6 hats. So just when you have a time, you can look at them, and we will refer back to this during the meeting, especially if the facilitator feels like she needs the help of everybody to be a certain way. Look at it from different problems, or look at it, we're going to brainstorm now, so there's no criticism at all.
Right away. I'm turning it in now. You move right by it.
Awesome. Well, and maybe if you want to take a moment and type in the hat that you're feeling most similar to right now, as we kind of approach starting this new group, and kind of what describes your feeling right now, and that will be sort of interesting as we kind of go along. So if you want to do that, that would be great.
Keep that on so people can see it.
Yes, sorry. You might want to read that. Yes. Interesting. This is very cool. Thank you all for sharing. Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like we have a little bit of background noise from one phone. So if you would mind muting yourself if that happens to be you, that would be fantastic. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the next little exercise, which is really fun. And I have to admit, I completely stole this from the Open Media Foundation. They did a solutions exercise with the Gary Community Investment Project for Early Childhood Mapping that actually Quan is also involved in, I know. So Quan, this will look very familiar to you, but I think it's very different content, so we can kind of have some fun with this. Oh, good. Great. So the first little, we're going to kind of go through this together. This is a little different because in the room, you would actually have a handout, and you'd kind of write down a problem that you are having, experiencing in Sugar ECConnect, and then you would kind of hand it to the left of you, and there'd be another little box that would be a solution. And so the person to the left of you would write in a solution to your problem. And then you hand it to your left again, and then the next person would be like, no, that solution's totally not going to work because of these reasons. And then they would hand that over and come up with a final solution. So we're going to do this a little bit differently since we're remote. So if you could take a moment to think about a key problem that you are currently experiencing in Sugar or ECConnect, and chat your problem in 1 to 2 sentences. So keep it really simple and kind of to the key point. And word it in a way that your next person will be able to craft a solution to that. It takes a little bit of brain power, so it's good. That's a good problem. And so I'm going to give an example problem. I meant to coordinate this with Lisa from Larimer before this meeting. But she just did a really great job describing a problem that they were having that actually was affecting some other councils as well, where the official license mailing address is actually not the appropriate ship-to address for purchase orders. And there are a variety of reasons why that could be the case, but that was absolutely not on our radar as something that would be an issue. We thought that mailing addresses with licensing would be a really great authoritative source on, you know, what address the system should be using to generate these purchase orders. And so that, oh, good. Oh, I was like, oh, there it is. So this is a good example. Official mailing address is not appropriate shipping address. So, so Rick just did a great job kind of consolidating all of my many sentences into one sentence, which is very helpful. So this is a good example problem. Has anyone chatted in some additional problems? Okay, great. So one example is the dollar value of coaching in our rural area. We are often showing negative balance in coaching hours. Yeah, and I think that is a recurring, you know, common issue across many councils. I think everybody can see the chats as they come in, so if you want to just take some time and read through some of these problems. Yes. So here's another good one. We have some providers with the same names but different license numbers. They can be hard to determine the different ones in selection tabs. So that is a really good problem. Gosh, I almost just wanted to answer that, but that is not my role in this. So we can go through that together. Anyone else want to share any problems? There is no judgment in this group, so everyone should feel really comfortable sharing anything. Some of the fields that I expect to be able to edit, discount shipping fees in spending module, are sometimes locked. That is another really great problem. So I think at this point, you know, if as a group we want to pick one of these problems, we can take it through the process. We can pick any one of these problems, but then we're going to revisit this with the address question, and then kind of show you how we developed a solution for that address and kind of show you our template for kind of creating a mini development project. Again, we are really trying to slow down the development process. Over the last 18 months, you know, we've had to deliver on things very rapidly. And so we really didn't have the luxury of being able to slow things down. And now with the creation of this group and sort of the majority of work being complete, we can really slow things down and collect this input and kind of have a more comprehensive process before we implement a change. So we're going to go through that. So does anyone have a particular problem that they really want to see go through this process? And you're welcome to just speak up or chat in. We can kind of vote on any one of these questions that have come in. And we don't want to pick it because it's your meeting, so you need to tell us which question you want to answer. Anybody? Mailing address issue. Well, that would make it very easy for us, but so we can use that as the example, and then we can see if we want to revisit any of these other questions. I will tell you that absolutely, following this meeting, we will follow up with each one of these questions and make sure that you have a good understanding of what our expectations are, of what should be happening, and if those expectations are not actually happening, then we may need to revisit the development to see if there's something that we need to fix, correct, or change. So we are going to insert the problem. which is official mailing address is not the appropriate ship. Okay. So, if everyone could take a minute and think about what are some ways that we could solve the problem. So really, you know, if everyone can kind of chat in one quick idea on how the heck, we've got this ECConnect system, you know, we're having providers go in and create orders, and when they create an order, it's automatically populating their ship-to address based on their official licensed mailing address. And that's causing all kinds of problems because down the line, from a purchase order perspective, the vendor receives that address, tries to mail it to maybe an admin office or some location in a rural community that's not really an official mailing address. And so that there's a huge delay in receiving the product, there's confusion. So how do we go about correcting that? Okay, so Sharon chatted in something really great, which was I would add the proper shipping address in the special notes field. And Sharon, you must have actually read the guidance on the support site because that's exactly what you are supposed to do right now. So thank you so much for suggesting that. Let's see, we have Amy who chatted in edit the shipping address. So that's a good one too. So we're going to go ahead and start typing in some of these possible solutions, right? So one is allow editing of the shipping. The second is add the proper shipping address to the instructions field. Any other ideas that want to build on that? Talk to our mail woman. She delivers the whole little county I'm in. That's a good idea. So very informal relationship building to mail woman who delivers in the whole county. I didn't cheat, Sharon says. That's funny. Great. Well, I think that's a really good starting point. So why don't we break these down? So we're going to move on to the next little part of the exercise, which is what may be a problem or problems with the suggested solutions. So what's going to put a wrench in some of these suggested solutions? So the first one is allow editing of the shipping address. What could be some things that might be an issue with allowing the editing of the shipping address either within Sugar or within ecConnect? Does anything come to mind? And maybe Phil or Kwan, you might have some ideas about why we wouldn't necessarily be able to edit the QRIS official license address. Why might that be? Sorry for calling you out.
Excuse me. You lose data integrity, which is coming from the authoritative source, which is here in CDHS.
That's great. I'm thinking of something even more practical than that, but that's really great. Won't it update at the next data transfer? Heather Hawk gets a gold star. So yes, it's going to be overwritten every single night.
Yep, I was just about to say that.
So you're going to do all the work trying to update that address field, and it's just going to override every single time. So sorry, Phil, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, it would be overwritten whenever the sync comes through. Yeah.
Perfect. And Nicole also added constant changes could cause further confusion. That's absolutely true. Okay. So we can't really allow editing directly of the QRIS shipping address. What about this, add the proper shipping address to the special instruction field? What might be some problems with this?
So I've tried that, and I've had the vendor not pay attention to it, so it didn't work.
Yep, that's exactly right. The vendor completely ignores it. So, which, you know, in their defense, there's this really nice big block field that says ship to address. So, you know, the vendor is kind of looking at the standardized places in the purchase order. But the vendor should be paying attention to special instructions anyways. So we do know that Sarah in the ECCLA office has been really working very closely with all of the approved vendors to really solidify the expectations that we have of them as approved vendors, that they really are looking at things like that. But the whole point is, like, you know, this is not a systemic fix. This is a workaround, right? So it's a workaround instead of an actual fix to the problem. And at this point, we might have needed this workaround until we are able to implement an actual fix. So that might be. Okay, now what about talking to the mailwoman who delivers in the whole county? What might be some problems with that? Any ideas?
More than one mail.
There might be more than one mail person. Or maybe they change jobs, or, you know, it's very informal. But that might work great as a workaround. Or maybe you don't know the person. It's just not a super official way of doing something, right? Do you know which shipper is being used? That's a good point. So it might not be through the U.S. Post Office. It could be through a whole variety of different shipping vendors. Great. Any other thoughts on this? Okay, great. So it sounds like, you know, some of these are just not going to quite work. Maybe we can kind of copy down these two and think about what's a new solution. Now that we've really kind of spent a little bit more time thinking about it, what's a slightly different type of solution that could still accomplish some of these same things? Like, you know, we want to be able to edit a test and make it very clear to the vendor exactly, you know, what is the appropriate ship-to address. So how could we solve that problem? Any ideas?
Have providers contact license to the address.
Have providers contact license to correct the address. Woo! That gets some gold stars. But sometimes, you know, it could be that maybe the licensing address is correct for something, but is not correct for a big, you know, learning material shipment or something like that. But that, of course, you know, best practice is that licensing has the right addresses, right? So we have Heather saying we contact the vendor directly to make the change on the invoice. That, again, that sounds great. I think that's a little bit more of a manual workaround. Make change. So remember who we have in the room. We've got a very talented developer who is able to take issues like this and think about what would a development solution look like that would fix this problem. So think about, like, if you could change something in Sugar or ECConnect, what would you change so that this would no longer be a problem? Any ideas? So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to put you in our shoes a little bit. So when we get some of these questions through the support desk or sort of usability requests and things like that, what we have to do is we have to really understand the problem, and then we've got to bounce around a whole bunch of ideas on how we could fix the problem, and then we have to figure out, wait, is that causing more problems than it's fixing? And then we actually have to get to a real solution that we can implement, test, and release out to council. So we're kind of trying to get people into that mindset. Okay, great. So Nicole is saying, have providers contact, oh, sorry, we got that one. Send a ticket with the new shipping address to be updated. Are you saying send a ticket to the ECCLA support desk or to the Colorado Shine support desk? And then Nicole came up with a really great idea. Allow providers to enter shipping address on ECConnect for new requests. That sounds pretty good. That sounds like a really nice, elegant solution that's not too much of a headache. Allow multiple addresses for each program. Okay. Emily is saying, require shipping address to be entered by provider in ECConnect when spending request is placed. So, and that, I think, follows this first idea, allow providers to enter shipping address on ECConnect for new requests. That's great. See, so we're getting some really great ideas. So Phil is saying, have a separate field for shipping address that would initially be populated with the mailing address, but wouldn't override every night. This field could then be manually overwritten by end user needs. So Phil, I don't know if we already told you our solution or not. That's basically it. So great job. I don't remember if you cheated or not, but
no,
yeah.
No, that'd just be my approach to it.
Yep, I think we are on the same page. So that is great. Thanks so much, Phil. It's always good to have confirmation, right? Thinking about it.
Amy, the blind leading the blind. I mean.
Right. That's totally possible. So then Amy is saying, submit a ticket to ECCLA support. And that is a great approach as a non-developer, right? So you're always going to submit tickets to ECCLA as you see issues occur, and then ECCLA is kind of going to go through this process of figuring out what's the problem, what's the solution, and kind of brainstorming that. Lisa is agreeing with Phil. Phil's option seems good. So this is fantastic. I mean, actually, really what our solution that we developed is very similar to what this is. So what we're going to do is actually pop over, give you an example. How are we doing on time? So we have started doing a little mini scope of work for each project because we were finding that we often had little projects kind of grow legs and spread across and have all these related things that you needed to kind of think about, and so we were trying to formalize that in a little bit of a document or an Excel spreadsheet, you know, to really make sure that we're thinking about not only the exact thing that we're working on, but any repercussions with workflows, with other modules, with new fields, and things like that. So this is just an example we wanted to share with you because it's pretty straightforward, and pretty soon you're going to be seeing way more complicated versions of this for way harder projects. So we kind of wanted to like ease you in to this process. So this is around the provider shipping address. And as Lisa is saying, she's saying submitting tickets is how this got resolved. So this is great. You know, it has taken us a little bit of time. You know, you can see we were originally working on it in February. It's just now being finalized. And that's just because while this isn't, in and of itself is a relatively simple project, we have sort of, you know, stacked up priorities. So we have ongoing priorities around maintenance and support. We have new development we're still working on. And we have sort of systemic issues that we're having to monitor around things like duplicate classrooms and things that we're trying to work with our partners to make sure, you know, the data coming over from Salesforce is clean and is kind of coming in a way that isn't causing problems in data quality on our side. So even though, again, this is a relatively straightforward process, you know, we have to kind of queue it up in line with all the other priorities that we have. So the overview is really that we're trying to allow providers to update their shipping address without needing to go through Colorado Shine. So the primary requirements are that you would have the ability to store 2 sets of shipping addresses. Because basically, just to Phil's point, you know, we are happy with the physical address for licensing. That really should not be changing. And then there's a mailing address for licensing. So what we need to do is store another set of address fields for the actual ship-to address for things like learning materials, or if you're getting a sink delivered or gravel delivered, or you know, whatever it is, you know, you need a legitimate address for that. And the second high-level requirement is that we wanted the ability for users to be able to specify that new address through the ecConnect portal at the time they submit a new spending. So again, kind of coming back to your brainstorming, this is really exactly what you guys are saying. Allow providers to enter shipping address in ecConnect for new requests. What we were thinking is that we would even further that a little bit more by showing them, like, hey, you know, thanks for submitting this. This is the shipping address we have on file for you. Let us know if this address is not right by clicking here, and then they enter in a new address. Because in the majority of cases, these 2 addresses on file is going to be absolutely appropriate. There's no reason to have them like retype that every time they submit. Right? So we would just want them to be able to toggle the option to say, oh, I do need to enter a new shipping address. Then we would store that address, get overwritten. But then we're trying to list out, you know, what modules are being impacted, and that's so that we can understand any ripple effects. Like, you know, this is a simple example, but we have some really complicated, what's called logic hooks in Sugar that have ramifications that go across many modules. So we really need to be able to appropriately plan for what that's going to look like. So user interface, we're going to update the portal to display that current shipping address at the time a spending is submitted, add a confirmation of whether or not they'd like to update that address, and if a new address is specified, the portal will override those fields on the account record. And then we're talking about, you know, what new fields are needed versus what are changes to fields. So we're really trying to document that. If there are any relationship changes, this gets a little bit technical, but you know, customer relation management systems are built. The reason why they're powerful is because of relationships between objects in the system. So a lot of times we will have relationship changes involved. Logic hook is kind of what we were talking about previously. That is really Bill's specialty, and he can update the logic hook to automate some of these processes behind the scenes to reduce manual workarounds. Workflow changes. Workflows are just the emails that get sent from Sugar. All of your approval workflows are examples of emails being sent to you. And what we were thinking is that we did want to generate an email confirmation to the primary contact on the account, and possibly CC the Colorado Shines help desk, letting them know that there is a change in the shipping address, and add in some language around, you know, the circumstances in which they may report a mailing address change to licensing. So again, kind of going back to one of those solutions that was suggested, which was, hey, if the address is wrong, tell licensing to update the address. Now, sometimes that can't happen in a timely enough manner to really get orders processed. So this way, everybody's informed, but we can still move forward with the order in a time. And then testing, we want to be sure that we are thinking about the scenarios that we need to test. You know, some things are, you have almost endless scenarios that you really need to test, and that's where sometimes we will roll out a new change, like, for example, with spending action. And maybe there's a scenario in your council that we didn't anticipate, and so we didn't test that scenario. And so what we're trying to do through this advisory group is really understand all the scenarios that we need to test when we're going to roll out new development, so that we can anticipate all of that accurately, test it all before we release it, and then hopefully the kinks, we have fewer kinks to work out after release. Are you able to hear? Okay.
For the most part, we can hear you fine. There's just blips here and there. I don't know if it's something that others are experiencing much, but me and Phil, we experience some of that.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
I just heard you fine right now.
Okay. Well, I was moving my hands all around. Maybe that's why.
Okay. That's fine. For the most part, it's working well.
Okay, good, awesome. Yep. All right, well, we'll keep going then. So yeah, this is just kind of an example. What do people think about this kind of format? Do you feel like this is simplified enough that this is a good way of presenting information to the advisory group kind of on an ongoing basis? Do you think this is way too much detail for you? Just kind of give us a temperature read on kind of how you're feeling about this.
How would they use this as the advisory group? I'm not quite sure. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the questions that I have.
Great. So Rick was just asking, how would the advisory group use this document? So I think that we wouldn't actually sort of, email this to you or anything like that, but we would just use this as sort of an outline to help. So when we meet as an advisory group, if we've got a major project that's going on and need to kind of explain it to you and get your feedback and ideas and bounce things around, this is the kind of format we would use. To kind of, so that we capture everything, or we can try and think of a more simplified version of this. It's just tough because sometimes when you try to oversimplify something complicated, you lose the ability to get that really valuable. So it looks like we have chat. I think it helps me understand how the whole system works. I think it is great, and how complicated or not the request is, and evaluate if the request is worth the effort. Okay, yeah, so I think, that is exactly what we want to revisit after we kind of get through this example is what level of project do we bring to the advisory group for review versus things that we just handle internally so that we can move things along. So Lisa's saying the concept of this document is good and would even help us suggest changes in sugar, et cetera. Great, great feedback. Okay, fantastic. Oh, I like it. Good. Awesome. Great. And, you can chat in, negative comments as well. We're all about constructive criticism. So, let us know if there's anything we can do that would make it better. Yes, I agree. It does help understand how the system works. Nicola saying, I like it. Helps us know exactly what kind of helps create an effective change. Great. Thank you. Yeah. And I think, this is why sometimes on the support desk, asking more and more clarifying questions. I think there's some background noise, so somebody can mute their phone. There's some background noise. Thank you. If you could please mute phones if you are not speaking, that might be helpful.
I agree.
Okay, so I went ahead and muted everyone so that we can all hear, but feel free to unmute yourself if you want to say anything. So yeah, I think that's why sometimes you might feel like we're kind of digging in on a question to try and understand the circumstances with which you're running into a problem. This process is why we do that. So we're really trying to understand what exact field changes are triggering the error you're seeing or are causing you to run into sort of a roadblock in your approval process or something like that. Because without those very specific details, it's really hard to get to what happened in this case and how do we fix it. Or how do we guide you in understanding which steps to follow. The whole idea behind, for example, actions and spending is that it's supposed to be more intuitive than statuses were because people were often skipping statuses that were important. But now we're kind of adding a whole lot of actions to spending, and so it's becoming less intuitive. So it's really that balancing act of we want to be able, we can handle every possible circumstance, but we also want a simplified way of approaching actions that update statuses. So let's see. Oh, that's a good one. So, all right, let's see. We'll start with Phil. Okay, so Phil's saying, I like the form. I was a little worried that the other folks on the team might find it a bit technical, but if they're okay with that, great. I do think the form seems a bit like a bug tracking form, but perhaps this is the nature of the process. Yeah, you know, we hadn't really looked at a bug tracking form, so that might be another approach that we could look at. And then there's another comment, can we add estimate of how problem is affecting people and business work? I think that's a great idea, maybe under the overview, sort of the why it matters, right? So estimate of how problem is affecting people or organizations. And maybe what we could do is, you know, give an example support ticket scenario if possible. Because that might help give some context to the problem. I don't really know how to use Google Docs very well. I was going to make it pretty, but I don't know how to do that yet. So,
add an area of urgency.
Oh, that's a good idea. So maybe up here we can say urgency level. Dropbox? Oh, yeah, we can consider Dropbox. I think, you know, a lot of developers really love using Google Docs. And so I know for, like, I am not a Google Doc user, and especially in Google Excel, I feel like I just want to just strangle it because you can do so much more in Excel, I feel like. But I think Google Docs and Google Excel sheets are really helpful because a lot of developers use it, and so if we're ever collaborating with Office of Early Childhood or their developers, a shared Google Doc is a really nice way of doing that because everyone has access. All right, any other thoughts about this? Let's see, I'm going to go back up to our agenda and see where we are.
Yeah, we're working on the new part, which is adding to our purpose.
Great.
And that's what we're doing right now.
Perfect. Perfect. It's like we planned that.
Yeah.
So great. So I think, you know, I did just want to give you a glimpse. I know some of our OEC partners on the call were interested in kind of thinking about a bigger project that we have queued up, which is some funding stream and requisition enhancements. So I wanted to give you an example of when a project is very complicated. What we will do is we will actually mock up what the layout in Sugar will look like and kind of give some example data in those fields so that we can really see how calculated fields would work or roll-ups would work and things like that. Now this funding stream project is somewhat complicated, but something that I think will resolve many questions. I wouldn't go as far as to call them issues. They're not technical issues, but where we're having a lot of questions from councils is how do they tie their requisitions and spending back to their approved OEC budget. And so for a period of time, we were kind of waiting for the state to sort of prioritize syncing down sort of official funding stream data from Salesforce. But there were some delays in that particular contract with that particular developer. And so, you know, we decided that we would kind of design this in parallel, and that now we're going to be kind of coming back together with the Office of Early Childhood and, of course, this group to really finish that project and have a two-way sync between funding streams between Salesforce and Sugar and from Sugar back up to Salesforce. So, so that's the big piece of the whole ecConnect expansion project funded through the Office of Early Childhood that has still not been completed, which is the actual sync of information from Sugar up to Salesforce, primarily related to quality improvement spending, coaching activities, and requisitions. So this, I think, will help us from a usability standpoint kind of lay things out. And so, we're not going to go through this, but as you can see, there are like, 18 tabs or something on this spreadsheet. So it gets a little complicated, but that's why it's even more important that we try to get your feedback from this group. So I'm very hopeful, and I think based on who's in the group, we have a really great sort of technically savvy group of people who can really dive into something like this. So we're going to talk a little bit about, as a group, how do we want to set up our process? So, for example, what we might consider doing is, let's say we're meeting every 2 weeks during this very busy time in development. Maybe what we would do is we would send you a mock-up, so a Google Excel sheet, for example. We might send you that in advance of the meeting so that you have time to at least look at it and start kind of digesting what is it. And then we could go over it on the next call and kind of field questions and feedback and talk about scenarios and kind of exceptions. So, we're always having to try and develop to be inclusive of any of those sort of outliers and exceptions. And sometimes we have a hard time knowing exactly what all the exceptions would be for all councils, because we've based a lot of our development on a handful of councils just out of necessity over the past year and a half. So does that kind of process seem like that would be good for people? Do you feel like that would be a good, so we kind of send out almost advanced homework for a meeting, and then we would take that time during the meeting to do a quick overview, but since you've reviewed it, then we can really dive into discussion, feedback, and kind of next steps. Would that sort of format work well? So it looks like we got a comment. I like the idea of sending it for us to look at before the next meeting. Great. Yes, I like to be able to think about it first. Sounds good, sounds good. Okay, good. So it sounds like that's a good approach. Now that may not always be possible, or it might not always be applicable. So we might not have, the Sugar Advisory Group will live on, in perpetuity along with ECCLA, right? As long as we've got data systems, we will have this group. So there are going to be periods of time where we really don't have a lot of active development going on, and so this kind of homework, advanced homework, would not be necessary. But during this period, we know there's a lot going on, so we want to be able to streamline that as much as possible, give you enough time to think about things before we jump in. So let's see. If I'm being honest, I probably won't get to look at it much or at all beforehand, but I would try to do as much to be informed prior to the conversation. Well, thank you for your honesty, Phil. I agree. I think there's some of these work groups and committees I know I've participated in where, like, you get to the meeting 5 minutes early and you're trying to cram in and read all the stuff that they sent you right before the meeting starts. And I think that's okay too. I think as long as we've got, some handful part of the group who has reviewed it in advance, who can kind of start the conversation, then other people can catch up throughout the call. And it might be, if something you're really interested in, you might want to spend that extra time. If something that's a little bit peripheral to what your core purpose is, then it might not be something you spend a lot of time in. So actually, as an example, Phil, I could see that you would probably, you and Colin, maybe Quan, would probably want to look pretty closely at the funding stream enhancements, given our other conversations that are going on right now. But that other things like this address change might not be as interesting to you. So, and I think that that's fine. We've got a big enough group. I think we should have some percentage of people who are kind of engaged in pre-work for the group. Any other feedback on that? Okay, great. Well, in the last few minutes, as we think about the purpose of the group, know that we will be working on creating a template, from a template, kind of a charter document that talks about what the advisory group is authorized to make decisions on. And there might be different levels to that. So there might be some changes where it's really going to be at the ECCLA staff discretion to move things forward and to get things done. There might be some things similar to the funding stream enhancements where it's going to be pretty involved, and at the end of the day, the Sugar Advisory Group will really, you know, take a big role in helping us finalize exactly what the development is, and actually also helping us test that it's working correctly in our dev environments. And then there might be another level where it's so big that the advisory group might need to collect the information and then might need to actually take it to the ECCLA Board of Directors to make a decision. So an example of that might be, going back to the very beginning of this call, we talked a little bit about, you know, an example of if we wanted to make enhancements related to a like project launch, as an example. There's a lot of really great information that we could potentially collect in Sugar around project launch and the grant objectives for that program. That may be something that is so big and unique and is not currently funded, for example, that we would need to take that to the ECCLA Board of Directors, talk about the feasibility, talk about where the funding would come from, who would have access to that information, who would have access to the modules or different fields. And so that's a little bit more involved. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it, is breaking it out into levels like that. Does that sort of make sense?
I'm taking notes here.
Yes, thank you. Okay. This is great. Does that sort of make sense to people? Or do you have any thoughts about like what might trigger, you know, advisory group approval versus board approval versus something that the staff is just taking care of? Yes. Okay, good. And I know you don't have a document to look at to kind of provide your feedback on, but what we wanted to do is kind of solicit a little bit of input first before we just go ahead and craft these things, and then our plan will be for our next meeting to go ahead and present a draft to you. There are some things, we have a formal data sharing agreement with the Colorado Department of Human Services, and we also have a in the works formal data sharing agreement with the Colorado Department of Education. And we all have different contractual obligations with other funders. And so we really need to be mindful of kind of cascading those data sharing and confidentiality components from all these very important agreements, so that we really have a thoughtful, well-governed, you know, very large data system with lots of different users. We support about 200 users in Sugar, 200 active users. So we really need to make sure that those things are really tight. You know, we will be running through this group, for example, final click-through agreements, and what that is when we will kind of reset everybody so that when you log in, once this is finalized, then you'll have to kind of go through a terms of use that talks about confidentiality and data sharing requirements. As an individual user, we will have sort of cascading data sharing agreements with each council, with each member council. And all of this, you know, has been, you know, months and months and months of work trying to formalize these data sharing agreements with the state entities, so that then we can cascade those requirements down through the councils and to your users. So that's another kind of example of what this advisory group will be working on and responsible for, is really making sure that those things make sense. They're written in plain language. You know, everybody can understand, like, you know, I'm not allowed to go sell a list of phone numbers to a vendor, right? Like, you know, there are very simple things that we know we are not supposed to do, but we need to formalize. And so a lot of that is already covered in existing funding contracts, which is why there hasn't been as much urgency on that. But we want to make it a much more formal umbrella that can kind of be managed from that perspective.
I'm making notes, and if they're wrong, let me know.
Sounds good. Okay, so we did get one comment. So long as task ownership of seeking approval is determined when any approval beyond this group is needed, then I'm okay with this process. Okay, that makes sense.
Maybe we add that to the list of items, like who needs to
approve.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good idea. Let me add that here. Great. I'll make it red. Okay, great. Let's see. Any other comments? That's kind of a lot of information. I'm sorry, I tend to do that sometimes. Are there any sort of overarching thoughts about the charter, the sort of rules, the kind of content you'll be reviewing on this group? Are there any hesitations on, you know, whoa, this is not what I thought I signed up for, anything like that? I think we're pretty lucky that we have a great group of people who have this kind of technical interest. So thank you so much for being here for that. So I think, you know, the last sort of logistical thing that we need to figure out is how often do we want to meet? You know, we know the fourth quarter is like a crazy, you know, the highest volume of quality improvement spending and coaching, and everything is kind of all very important, time sensitive all the time. So we want to be really thoughtful on how often we meet. However, we also want to be thoughtful on all of the really important deadlines coming up. So for example, you may have heard about this spring quality improvement application that is supposed to be launching May 2nd. There are some dependencies on that application process that have not yet been met, and the deadlines have been missed in terms of finalizing the rubrics, application questions, and the final allocation of QI funds. So we are still striving to hit the May 2nd deadline, but there have been other deadlines that have been missed. So, you know, part of that application process, we need to have the funding stream enhancements at least partially implemented so that we can implement this new concept of a self-balancing pooled requisition, which will, we believe, really cut down on confusion and will completely remove the ability to be over-obligated on a quality improvement funding stream, which has been a concern of several councils, that they were over-obligating themselves, just accepting all the applications as they came in, as opposed to waitlisting sites after they reached their approved budget. So I just wanted to give that as an example. So, you know, ideally we would be able to meet even as soon as next Friday to talk about the funding stream enhancements. I know that that may not be completely possible, but I think over the next period of time we may need to sort of meet, you know, every other week or something pretty consistently so that we can make sure we're moving things along. So we did get a chat here from Sharon. Does the development group work on a consistent sprint cycle? Does it make sense to consider when decisions need to be made in terms of how often we meet? I'm not sure what you mean by sprint cycle. Can you elaborate? Do you know what that is?
Lisa also had another comment about that, too.
Okay, great.
Yes, I came from a product development team that did technology in an agile process, and we were on a 2-week sprint cycle. So, you know, we never wanted to hold developers up from being able to plan what was in the next, we call them sprint cycles, which is a build.
Right, that makes sense. Do you want to talk about
Sure. So this is Bill speaking. Our development team is pretty available, and we're down here pretty regularly. The only thing is that we do have deadlines and development does take time, so the longer we wait on making decisions on moving forward, the shorter amount of time that we have to implement and test it. And the testing component is especially important because if we, rush to release something and it's not ready, then that causes all sorts of problems that we really want to avoid.
Yeah, so I would say, I think we can try to come up with a very simplified timeline and that we can send out to the group specific to funding stream enhancements and spring applications. But I would say if we could meet next Friday, that would be really helpful in kind of moving that along. And then probably what we would do is not meet the following week, but kind of have you all log in and test the development as it occurs, as we're able to release things to that development site. So you would not be responsible for any sort of initial testing. We would do a whole slew of testing first, and then you would kind of go in and just do some regular stuff that you usually do and, see if it works or if you're running into problems. I think that's a part of our development cycle that we have completely been missing. We've had some of our Denver staff test things before release, and we've had sometimes like Larimer or some other councils might test a few specific things, but we really want to build that in as just the standard process for these bigger changes. We are feeling some pain points around, for example, spending actions. That's something we're going to talk about at today's support call. And part of that is that we are trying to accommodate whatever people are putting in their support tickets, and then some set of people want XYZ and another set of people want lowercase XYZ, and so we're trying to kind of match those things together. And I think if we had another group to sound things off of, we can come up with a better end released product. Okay, so let's see. I was just kind of trying to go back up to the comments here. So Lisa's saying to focus on the big picture, to focusing down and prioritizing. Can we look at modules at some point and seek input, offer feedback, etc.? Oh, I see. So kind of doing a sort of an extensive, today we're going to focus on this module and talk about all the things that we wish were different about this module. And yes, I think we can do that, but not yet. We have, as we kind of talked about, we have some major priorities that need to happen now. And so without trying to, be insensitive, we have to focus our efforts on these particular areas. And then once we're through the application launch and, like the first week of applications, then we can focus, we can turn our attention to, okay, now generally speaking, where do we want to see improvements of the system, kind of maybe put together an order of what modules we want to go through in which order. And actually that would be a great learning experience for Rick as well, to really learn the system and see all of the different components. So I would be completely in favor of doing that once we get through this big push for funding streams and applications. So Phil's saying, I was initially thinking monthly meetings with meetings in between comprised of special task members to resolve specific issues. That's a great thought. So maybe what we could do is have anybody who's really interested in the funding stream and requisitions enhancements, if you're available next week, we can meet with a smaller group, and then we can kind of schedule meetings kind of regularly on a monthly basis with special meetings as needed. I sort of love that idea, because that way we're not just holding something on the calendar if we don't need it. I have another meeting scheduled next Friday. I may be able to reschedule. Okay. I'm good for next Friday. After that, I've got about 4 weeks of all-day Friday training. Woo! Good luck with that, Nicole. That's a lot of training. Perfect. Well, you know what we could do is we can tentatively schedule it for next Friday. I think same time will work. We'll kind of compare notes internally, send something out. If you're available, fantastic. If you're interested, fantastic. If you really wish you could be there and you can't make that time, let us know and we'll see if we can shift things around. But also we will record every advisory group meeting. So if you ever miss one, you can always go back and listen to it, you know, and kind of provide feedback after the fact. You're welcome to do that. You're even welcome to do that with meetings that you come to. You know, if you think of something later, please let us know. And actually, I would ask that you please send that only to Rick. Rick is going to compile any Sugar Advisory Group feedback. I just volunteered him for that because I know you all may have noticed, but I know we all get a huge volume of emails. My particular emails have been very high level recently, and so you know, I really want to be sure that we are responding to you very timely, and so we're going to make sure that all Sugar Advisory Group communications go to Rick. And he will make sure it gets to the right person. So you don't need to worry about CCing everyone. All right. Well, with that, I think we're kind of ready to start the wrap-up and talk about evaluation of the meeting. And anything else you want to add, Rick?
Okay. There's my email address that I just put on. And I'm going to send a link for to get into the, let's see if that worked.
I think I have it open too.
Okay. So yeah, if you could go to the link, the SurveyMonkey, and fill this in. There's only 4 quick questions and additional comments. This will help us plan each meeting. So the idea is to get better and better as we do each meeting. So I hope we'll be able to improve as we go.
And please liberally use the additional comments if you'd like to. So say whatever is on your mind.
Yes.
We want to know. So thank you for doing that. You can even make it really big. You just drag it. Sugar works this way too, in case anyone is wondering. Your little text boxes you can actually drag to make big or little in Sugar.
Know that.
Which is pretty cool. I think it's a PHP thing. So, great. Well, are there any questions? We have until 11:30. Right?
Yeah.
So, if there aren't any questions about that, you know, anybody who would like to jump off is welcome to. We did just want to give a quick heads up that those of you who were involved in the draft revisions of the quality improvement MOUs, rubrics, application questions, and QI allocations. It is our understanding that an update will be being sent out about that today from the Office of Early Childhood potentially. And we do have all of those documents on a shared Google link where you can add comments to things. So I believe what will be happening is that those links will be sent out to that group who was reviewing and revising those documents. And there will need to be a very quick turnaround because we have already exceeded all of our deadlines in terms of needing to get that information back to meet the May 2nd deadline for going live with spring applications. So just wanted to give people a heads up. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but you know, keep your eyes peeled for this. Have any comments or anything about rubrics or applications or MOUs, you can start filtering those through Rick, and we will collaborate internally and make sure that we can answer any questions that are coming up around that. So Amy's asking, will the solution exercise be available? I would like to use for our meetings. I know, isn't it awesome? I think everybody should steal it and use it for all their meetings. Yeah, we can send it out, absolutely. We'll send it out filled out too, so you can see kind of how we went through this particular problem. So So we might clean up the formatting a little bit and then send it out to you. Absolutely.
Yeah, just email it to me and I'll clean it up.
Oh, thank you. Okay, great. Well, I can't believe it, but we are ending the meeting early. That's amazing. So thank you so much for all your participation. If anything else comes up in your mind, you can throw it in your survey. Email us, email Rick, and we will get back to you. We will send out some materials about next week's meeting ASAP today, and just let us know if there's anything that you need or want, and we will do our best to accommodate that. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.